Hello, everyone. My name is Elsie Villegas. I am a recent graduate from Connecticut College. I'm currently on a fellowship studying in different countries and researching how technology can be more inclusive and accessible to rural and Indigenous communities. And so today's presentation is called Building Bridges Culturally Sensitive Technology Integration in Indigenous and Rural Communities. So some of the topics I'll be discussing is like the inspiration for this project and the opinions that have been formed around um, technology inclusivity in Indigenous and rural communities, the guiding questions that I'm using to help me develop my research. I'll be touching base on language and cultural endangerment and also the technological approaches that are being used to address these issues. And within that, some of the issues that I've been able to identify in the current approaches to technology, whether that be for these technological solutions, but also what technology development looks like and how we cannot just apply the same piece of technology to every problem that we find. And I'll finish off with findings in Belize and what I've been able to see and how my perspective on technology has changed ever since I've gotten here. So, my inspiration for this project actually started based on my family's heritage. My family comes from Oaxaca, Mexico, and my mother's grandfather spoke Mixtec. However, he refused to actually pass down the language to my grandmother and my mother on the basis that they would be shunned by our community and that they would be made fun of for speaking improper Spanish. Um, but he did pass down some of his knowledge to my mom, translated into Spanish. However, I do sometimes wonder like how much of the knowledge that he did have could not be passed down because of this known thing that languages can't just be translated from one language to another, and a lot of languages carry unique ways of thinking. So it's something that I do think about sometimes. It wasn't until like college that I actually got the opportunity to understand what having a great grandfather that spoke Mixtec and had all of this knowledge, what that actually meant for my family and I. I feel like majority of my education in the United States was based on like learning facts about the United States and all of that. But I was actually given the opportunity to learn about myself for the first time in college. And I met this wonderful professor, Professor Bennett, who actually allowed me to find resources that helped me understand what anthropology is like and how to combat those bad perspectives of anthropology and sort of shape it to understand myself and communities better. At the same time, I was also touching a little bit on computer science, and I realized that you can make programs and pieces of technology and resources for a lot of communities worldwide with just a piece of program. So I have this really passionate thing where I like to help people, and I saw that this was something that would help me help others, but I wanted it to be more sensitive and I wanted to be more inclusive of people. So I decided to combine both anthropology and computer science. And that led me to the Watson Fellowship, which helps me become a better advocate for personal and social ways of developing information communications technologies based on the use of cultural preservation and catering to different cultures. Instead of making people cater to technology, I think we're the ones developing these pieces of technology that can actually help others and not make them have to change for anything. So, some of the opinions that have been circulating around ICT and technology in Indigenous rural areas has to do with access to technological resources. So, how do these communities actually come to play with these game changing pieces of information and communication technologies and what that would look like? So, some people actually think that communities would be better off if they adopted full scale adoptions of digital devices, while others believe that the community themselves should determine at what pace and how much they want technology to be incorporated in their community. I think, from my understanding so far, that it should be a collaboration between the community and the partnership or whatever organization is there to help them access these resources. It should be a collaboration so that they can advocate for themselves on what they need and the issues that they're seeing, but also be educated on what is out there as a possible solution. So, therefore, allowing the community to decide how much technology can be incorporated into their members' lives. And so, the guiding questions that are helping me understand how technology is being used in these aspects are like how can cultural values shape technological developments rather than making people adapt to technology, making the technology adapt to people in different cultures. How does technology influence cultural practices and traditions in the long run, and actually paying attention to those underlying issues that may arise after. So, I also want to see more about how technology adds to endangerment of languages and culture, which we are seeing through globalization and like pushing modernization onto these types of communities. So I think I actually want to know how do communities integrate technology into daily lives, whether that would be like through agricultural technology or through digital devices in order to communicate with others. Like actually paying attention to how the community is currently using technology to benefit themselves and growing from there. Um, so yeah, currently I say that technology is pushing more towards endangerment of languages and culture because the dominant language on the internet is English, and so it does push this narrative that other languages are less used in the world. I would say because often community members see that their language are less useful, um, believing that the value only comes within their own community, as no one else outside that community would speak it. But if we're able to make technology more inclusive of different languages by allowing them to actually speak them or type them out into different posts or use like the same way that we use English, we can make it so that people see more value of their culture and their language in the world. And so, this lack of representation of Indigenous languages in technology is an issue. So, some of the technological approaches that are being used to help with the endangerment of languages and cultures is by making it more inclusive, has to do with First Voices keyboard that was developed in May of 2016. And so, this allows for people to create information and knowledge in their own language rather than relying on them to translate it into English so that the whole world can understand. Um, so some specializations on the keyboard are made so that you can be able to send emails, social media posts, word processing, and other apps through mobile phones. And that way, it includes languages that are spoken in Canada, New Zealand, and other countries. The issue that I found with this was that it was leaving out South American languages. And then I found the South American Native Language Keyboard, which included languages such as one found in Brazil and the Amazon. And so that's a really good push towards like making technology more inclusive, even um, for places that people may not think, I would say, deserve access to technology simply because they're in the Amazon. I feel like everybody deserves a right to have resources that help them, and so this is a way to do so. And lastly, Modeli, which is one of the projects that helped me understand and start this project um, that was developed in the University of Oaxaca, is called Modeli because it's a methodology for the design of educational digital objects for Indigenous languages. And so it helps it helped children in a small village sort of want to be more intrigued into learning music. And what they found was that children were more intrigued to learn music because they were playing around with technology and this app that showed them like, yes, my language is being represented in technology, and I'm also getting the opportunity to play with technology. But then it also made me wonder because my family's from Oaxaca and I visited a couple times. Like up until a few years ago, there was barely any cellular service, let alone Wi-Fi. So I was thinking like, okay, what is the accessibility issues that are arising if we do adopt this piece of technology to teach music for others? Like, will people who live in a further place be able to access this because of Wi Fi issues or actually access to digital devices as it can be very expensive? So, When I started to think about this, I put it into pros and cons. So the issue with our current approach to technology is that it does provide a tool for language and cultural preservation and inclusion and diversity in technology. And this allows for people to be more self reliant as they can produce knowledge and hold more value of their culture as we push more into like a world of technology. However, the cons are that some projects that do come into these communities tend to be unsustainable. Like once the project leaders leave, the project finishes and it wraps up. And so, how can we make these projects um, la- longer lasting so that the community members can keep these projects in their community and actually be able to learn from this? So that means like digital literacy, access to the technology, and how to fix these pieces of software and make them stay upgraded. So I also encountered that because there are accessibility issues, we do have to be more mindful of that as we move on with these projects. And so, if we think about the types of projects that we are seeing sometimes, the lack of community collaboration is an issue because you're not allowing the community to determine what they're comfortable with. And we sometimes might be able to push them into places that they're not comfortable with. And so that sort of pushes against what the motive of using technology to solve cultural preservation to help, because you're now pushing people to do something that they wouldn't want to do. So that's something that I've been sort of trying to understand more how what this collaboration looks like in communities. And my findings in Belize since I've been here for around 2 months or so has been that the ICT curriculum development occurring in schools is something that brought me here to understand more. Because I know my opportunity to understand technology and computer science allowed me to use my unique way of thinking of the world and bring it to do research in this area. So the more we develop ICT curriculum in schools, we're allowing people to sort of find an interest in it if they want, and then carry out their ways of thinking and bring it to technology to make it more diverse and inclusive. And so I did also find that websites are not used as much as they are in the United States. Yet there's a use of WhatsApp and Facebook as a way to circulate information and help share resources with others. So this is because IP addresses are actually very expensive to acquire, and website maintenance and management is like also hard. Um, but instead, finding alternative ways to share information does show like there are not the same pieces of technology need to be used to solve issues. And so I also saw that the computer centers and public libraries are ways to provide accessibility to computers for anyone who wants them, which is one of the ways that I was able to access technology when I was starting off and when I was younger. My mom would always take me to the public library and let me use a computer. So that's a good step. And then as the development of technological skills increases in Belize, I see that there's a desire to sort of understand more and develop digital literacy. So it's very interesting because I am going to so many countries to understand what the development of ICT curriculum and even technology looks like in these countries. So seeing how the infrastructure does affect what the country can do and where it's at in technology is very interesting. Uh, so yes. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I look forward to talking to anyone.